whether it's right or wrong. Right, wrong, they still follow. There's no stand. An example, I'll say this and we'll continue inshallah with our bahth. One day, Mughals and the Tatar from North Asia, they invaded Iraq and Syria, Bilad Sham and all this area, if you all remember in history. Basically they invaded, before they were Muslims. They became Muslims afterwards, alhamdulillah. But before that, they invaded Iraq and they invaded Syria and all that area. And the history says that they threw all the books, the treasure of books. The library of Baghdad at that time used to be the central library of the world, where every kind of knowledge is seeked right there. If you want to learn anything, you want to learn chemistry, you go to Jabir bin Hayyan in Kufi. In Kufi, you want to learn, that's where you go. Chemistry, physics, even medicine, Razi, all these people, you go to these books over there in Baghdad. Of course, when the Mughals came and the Tatar came, they took all these books because their people at that time, they didn't know anything but the sword. They haven't appreciated the civilization that the Muslim nation has reached at that time. They took all these books and they dumped it in the Tigris River, or Dijla, the river, or Al-Furat also, until people said that the color of the water of that river, which is a huge river back then, especially not like now, it had turned blue from the ink. Because in the old days they didn't used to print, they used to write. Imagine. And then they continued, these waves of armies, huge armies, and all they did is they burned and they killed. Ruthless, to the furthest extent. They came to Syria, and also there was fighting and all this. Anyway, I think in year 629, 669, if I'm not mistaken, there was the final battle, and the Muslims won, and many of these Mughals and Tatar became Muslims. Among their kings or leaders, a man named Taimur Lang. Taimur Lang is known, if you go to history, you say Taimur Lang, right? Taimur Lang, one time he was in Damascus, he said, he gathered some scholars, he said, I'm really tyrant. He was a tyrant. Taghiya. He did things, very unjust things. So he gathered the people around him. He said, I'm very fond of the names. I'm now the chief. I'm very fond of the titles that the Abbasi Khalifas or Abbasi rulers used to call themselves. Al-Mutawakkil ala Allah, Al-Wathiq billah. Remember that the Abbasi rulers, just like everybody else, after the Khulafa Rashidin, everybody else, they make their own kingdom and their own empire. But anyway, the Abbasi rulers, they used to call themselves titles at the end with Allah. Like Al-Mutawakkil ala Allah, that he is depending on Allah. Meanwhile, he killed most of the Muslims at that time. Any scholar said anything true, he killed them. Okay. Al-Wathiq billah, he is trustworthy and he's trusting Allah. Al-Muzaffar billah, he is victorious by Allah. Al-Muntasar billah. So he's telling this scholar, his name was Nasruddin. He said, Ya Nasruddin, I am very fond of these titles that the Abbasi rulers Khulafa used to call themselves. Al-Wathiq billah, Al-Muntasar billah, Al-Mustansar billah. Can you find me a name also like this, so I can call myself with? This sheikh, this scholar, he was wise. He looked at him, he said, yes, Na'udhu billah. Because also ends with Allah. Of course, some scholars used to do that with some kind of, depending on the situation. And of course, he said this, and then what is he going to do? The Taimur Lang, he looked at him, he said, go. Because everybody around him laughed at him. What Mustansar? What Mustansar? What Mudaffar? What did you do for Islam? Okay. So people follow. People follow. You tell them whatever, they still follow. And we forgot what Quran and Sunnah gave us. The Quran of Allah Jalla wa Ala and the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came to tell us what? Always verify. Always verify. If someone comes and tells you such and such person said this, don't take stand, because otherwise you'll be fasiq, you will sin. Go and ask that person yourself, not second-hand information. Al-Quran and the Sunnah always emphasized on first-hand info, not second-hand info. Let's move on. Because the propaganda of Fir'aun, they told people he is the Lord. He says he's the Lord, so everybody says he's Lord. Fir'aun one day, he saw a dream. Imam Al-Qurtubi, Imam Tabari, Imam Tabari rahimahullah, in his tafsir, والإمام طبعا شيخ المفسرين رضي الله عنه ورحمه. He says Fir'aun one day saw a dream. What's that dream? And the dreams are always a contact of the soul with other things. This is something to prove also that the human being is not simply a body. The human being is also the soul. There's a spirit that goes and comes. You sit right here in Atlanta and your soul dreams you're right in Mecca. What happened? All these barriers, all these physical barriers, all this distance, nothing. It's like nothing. And this is exactly the point. Because the body is out of material and out of mass. It's limited by the laws of physics. While the spirit is from a different nature, which is not limited by the laws of physics, which means distance and time, etc., etc., etc. But again, that's not our topic today. Though one man came to Ibn Sirin. Ibn Sirin, radiallahu anhu, tabi'i jaleel. He's a tabi'i. And Ibn Sirin, rahimahullah ta'ala, used to be almost of his time, the master scholar who interprets dreams. Anyone who has a dream, he goes to Ibn Sirin. And Ibn Sirin used to give him, and it comes always, almost always, like as true. One time, a man came to Ibn Sirin, and he knocked the door. His servant opened up the door, and the man asked her, "Where is Ibn Sirin?" She told him he's asleep upstairs. He said, "Let me in." She said, "No, don't bother him. When he wakes up, you can come back." He said, "No, I want to go in right now." She said, "What do you want? Tell me, I can tell you." Because if you stay with people for a long time, it rubs off. You kind of learn from them. And therefore, you're supposed to stay with scholars for a long time, so you maybe learn from them. And if you stay with ignorance a long time, you also learn from them. It always. Al-Qareem yuqaran biman iqtaran. As-Sahib Sahib. Okay. So Ibn Sirin told her, he said, "Well, I saw in my dream that I will fall and die." She said, "Okay, then you're going to fall and die." He said, "Stay out, get out of my face." He went up to see Ibn Sirin. On the stairs he fell and died. Because many times they say a dream is like a bird. Whenever you cut it, whenever you tell people about it, it'll fall, it'll happen. متى قص وقع. Therefore, from the Sunnah, if you have a bad dream, that you don't tell anyone about it. You wake up and you say, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim." You spit 3 times on your left side, and don't tell anyone about it. Go and say, I saw this. But if you see a good dream, scholars say 2 things. You may tell only if you're afraid.